the hospital of the future is not just the bricks and mortar hospital in the middle of Manhattan or wherever city you live. They have to build digital front doors into the world.
Welcome to UpTech Report. This is our Applied Tech series. UpTech Report is sponsored by Terraleap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today, I'm excited to be joined by my guest, Julian Flannery. He's based in New York. He's the founder and CEO at Summus. Welcome, Julian. Good to have you on.
Thank you, Alexander. Good to be here. Now,
Summus is a virtual specialist platform, and you're providing personalized expert advice to every medical decision. That's pulled from your website. And in our prep chat, I'm fascinated with, you said it was kind of born out of this focus on specialty care, creating this marketplace aspect, building a network of doctors across any health question.
Yeah.
And definitely virtual care has become huge during COVID. And you're trying to connect these, and you put a lot into your recommendation algorithm. We'll talk more about the technology in a little bit, but I'm curious, Julian, can you take me back to the beginning? What did you first see? How did this begin for you?
It's a great question. Well, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. Look, I tell a lot of people who want to found companies or want to be entrepreneurs that you never want to build a company just to build a company. You have to have a couple things. You have to have an idea that you passionately believe in, and you have to have a willingness to spend 3 to 5 years being highly resilient. Driving a company.
As people try to push you down and problems, you're you have to be ready to bounce back.
No question. And, I think where it came together for me, I've always in my life thought about the adventure of being an entrepreneur. I've had, diverse kind of professional experiences in my life, everything from finance to government, big institutions to kind of, middle market sort of growth companies. And it was
the first one that you've founded.
That's right. This is my first founding journey, which you always learn along the way. But it really came together. So my family, I come from a family of doctors, and so when I was a young man, my uncle sat me down. He's one of these sort of world-class surgeons, and he said, "You really want to do this? It's really hard." And ultimately, I was pre-med. I decided not to do it, right? Because the journey of becoming a physician is arduous. You have to have a deep appetite and passion for medicine and for patients. So anyway, I went a different route. But what I took from my family is really I understand the physician psyche. I understand how they work, and I also understand specialists. Right? There's sort of, when you think about the world of medicine, there's primary care doctors and there's specialists, and they have different personalities, and even the specialists have different personalities. You have surgeons, surgeons are also different. So I understood the world of medicine. I understood the physician view of the world. And then at the time, I was working at a company called GLG, which is the largest marketplace for expertise in the world. And the premise there was, sort of the foundation of primary research, where people who are making decisions with capital or nonprofits or lawyers or anybody making decisions, they want to get it. You can inform those decisions through access to a curated network of people who are, perfect for that particular question, right? So
you have this background in with your family in medical field. You don't want to go into it yourself, but you know about it because all your family is. But then you're active working in a marketplace environment, connecting to people. So then you just naturally start to realize a connection between.
Yeah, well, my co-founder and I sat down. He was he's a former surgeon, turned life sciences investor. And he said, "Well, what if we did the GLG for healthcare? What if we built a marketplace for expertise in healthcare?" And
what year did this happen that you guys sat down?
It was 2015. We really didn't get going until 2016, but that's when the idea was sort of hatched and whatnot. And that's where I think it's really, we'll talk about this, how COVID accelerated virtual care and all that kind of stuff. But that's where it really came together. I'd had my second daughter at the time, and I said, well, gosh, I really need to be able to, I need to think about whether or not I want to do this. I did about 3-4 months of research, looked at all the players out there, thought, got smarter about the tech and what we needed to build, and ultimately decided to do it. And it was, I would say, the founding journey for me has been the most challenging, professional experience I've ever had. And I've had some pretty challenging ones, but also the most rewarding and the most amazing, journey. Building something from nothing is a powerful, powerful feeling when you get it off the ground.
If you had to pick one of the more challenging challenges, is that a good way to say that? Of founding a company compared to all your previous challenges, what comes to your mind immediately?
At the end of the day, yeah, what comes to my mind is it is really 100% on your shoulders in the early days. Nobody's going to help you. And, they might, everybody applauds you, people talk to you about, capital partners, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you've got to get up and put 100% into trying to build a company every single day. And if you don't do that, it's really, you can't, you're sitting inside of a bigger company. You're like, well, you sort of hang around a little bit today. I'm a little tired, but if you do that, you just, nothing happens for you. So,
did you,
yeah, go ahead.
Did you get a VC funding at the beginning? Do you have that base to when you got started?
So I made the decision not to take VC funding in the early days. We put together a great group of investors, which were more individuals with sort of specialized talents and views, which has been tremendous. There's arguments for VC fund. We do have VC funding now, but we we decided to build a company using a different investor base than the sort of traditional sort of venture seed model.
So you start with a specific group of investors, angel investors, whatever you want to call them, that saw your mission. You start off. The first few years, was the problem that you were solving what you were what you expected? Did it have to be changed over time? What was that first few years look like?
Yeah, I mean, we started as a consumer business, and what you realize in healthcare is that people are reactive to healthcare. You can't be proactive with healthcare. You can talk about preventative care and wellness and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, building a business, you have to think about the reactive nature of people in healthcare. Something happens to me, therefore I'm going to engage the healthcare system, right? So the consumer business, I mean, there's lots of great, virtual companies or consumer focused companies in healthcare that have been built using the learnings of that. But I very quickly realized that we had to sell to employers and large groups. So that was, we made the transition to, from B2C to B2B, and that
what
was,
year was that shift happened?
That was right around late 2016, early 2017.
Okay.
And then, you realize, you're like, wow, this sales cycle thing, like, whoa, that's a little different, right? It's 12
consumers,
months long.
boom. And then businesses are like, yeah, we'll talk to you in 3, 6, 12 months.
Exactly. And you're sitting there looking at your cash flow and be like, would you mind like 2 months?
Let's move up the timetable. So it's fascinating. You come up with the idea in 2015, really kick it off 2016. That first year and a half, you're like, consumers, maybe not. Switch to business in 2017, focus on them. And from our prep chat, you're now focused on employers of 1,000 or more. Is that right?
Yep,
Mid-market, enterprise.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Sorry.
And cash flow, fun for the first year or so.
Yeah, I mean, that's my biggest advice to people, is just be ruthlessly focused on your cash flow and have a plan to get to break even. I mean, look, there's lots of venture models out there that's not the model, and I totally understand that. But in this type of thing where you have to think about sales cycles 24 months out, 12, 24 months, and just planning for that funding environment, making sure you're making the right investments, it's a journey. And you have to raise enough capital to do that, right?
Did you raise at that point some more capital?
Yeah, we had raised at that time about 2.5 million. Let's call it sort of our Series A, and then recently we sort of accelerated that with our Series B, and because there's sort of a clear breakout. Once you get traction and you've got a bunch of customers, we were actually break even and profitable. So it gives you a lot more leverage to go out there and say, look, we've got this incredible model, big market. We're profitable right now. I don't need your money, but here's the opportunity. It's a much better position to be in.
Did you plan that like perfectly? Like, all right, we're going to wait till we get profitable and we have the right margins, and then I'm going to go out and raise more capital. Was that like a step-by-step plan?
No. Well, I mean, look, I mean, I think very, very quickly you become very focused on the cash flow profile of your business, and the time of the sales cycle, the average contract values, what you need to make, the investments you need to make to try to drive those opportunities. But the goal is always break even, because again, as an entrepreneur, if you raise more capital, you're giving away more of your company. So, every entrepreneur has to, make decisions on capital partners, who they partner with, how much. And there is a dangerous game. I'm sure you talk to lots of tech entrepreneurs. There's a dangerous game where if you get a little overextended on valuation, or even, the capital you bring on, and you start to lose control of your company. And that's it's a decision that every entrepreneur needs to make. So,
Marketing to businesses in the healthcare, because you switched from consumer marketing in healthcare to now businesses, and this is like where you're those who have a lot of employees. What was that like? What was that mind shift and your messaging? How did that change, and how are you focused right now?
yeah, I mean, selling, the B2B sales cycle, thinking about marketing, you have to sort of combine, how are we different in the market? Our buyers are inundated with lots of different types of solutions. Our buyers are the HR teams, at
Hmm.
employers,
Hmm.
and they get hit up on a lot of things. And so you want to make sure that you understand how to engage them in the right way, how to expose them to your value proposition, why you're different. And ultimately, as I'm sure you have this conversation with many entrepreneurs, you just have to get a couple companies to bet on you, and then you have to deliver on that value prop, right?
Hmm.
And so, what I like about our journey is, some companies let the marketing get ahead of the actual delivery of what they say they're doing. We actually developed a product that was aligned with our marketing, right? So it was, we could go the next sales cycle and say, look, here's why we're so unique. And here's the data to prove it. Here's the feedback from our customers. And so you start to build credibility in the market, and then it's sort of a
Hmm.
snowball, and then you kind of drive that marketing engine.
Recipe for success: get a few, be able
Yep,
to use those as case studies in your marketing. Say, we've done it. This is how we can do it for you.
exactly. Yeah.
What are the alternatives to your platform? Like when you're selling to them, what are these HR managers? What are
Yeah.
they would be using?
Yeah, we have to think about it this way. I mean, it's like something like 14 billion was invested in the first half of this year in digital health companies, right? And so there are lots of companies, and HR managers and benefits managers are inundated. And so I call it a tapestry problem, where they've brought a bunch of stuff on board, but they have too many solutions. Their employees don't really know what to do, and so you know I think in terms of marketing, you really have to think about, differentiation, where you fit in the market. So we'll compete in the second opinion category. We'll compete in the navigator category. These are just categories of virtual care and digital health. We also compete with the specialized solutions. So, if there's whether it's a women's clinic, a fertility concept, an MSK, musculoskeletal concept, there's narrow solutions, there's broad solutions, there's primary care solutions, there's specialized care solutions. And so you really have to find your niche. And you have to really highlight your differentiating points, be able to back it up, be able to prove the ROI. And that's how you kind of get in the game, so to speak.
Yeah, finding those um, areas that you compete on, those the narrow, the wide. Was that fairly quick? Were you able to identify those, or what was that process
I
of
think it
doing?
has to be an ever evolving process, and it has to be tied to your product, right? So we started in the second opinion category, and we said, well, we're just better. We're video based. The quality of our network is better. But then we realized that we could go to market with a radically different model, which is we expanded our networks, and we created this really broad funnel inside of an employer where we can legitimately say to people, hey, 90% of your health questions, just type it in the box inside of the Summus platform, and we'll connect you within hours to a really high quality doctor who can help you understand what to do in healthcare. Right. And so you always, you always need to watch your competitors. You need to watch your buyers. You need to see where the market's going. And then really work on those differentiators, because they are, you know, HR buyers, at least in our industry, they want to put in good solutions that are going to deliver for them. They don't want to look bad, so they want sort of proof of the of the solution.
You had mentioned to me on our previous chat call about you're also helping small business, but through the connections of other platforms,
Yeah.
like HR solutions, or as like an API connection. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, we can be a differentiator for lots of different platforms that sell to companies, right? Whether it's HR platforms or benefit administrations platforms or TPAs, third party administrators. We can affect lives through those platforms. So they have their value prop. They go in there. The Ben admin industry, for example, is very competitive, right? So it's and so they're looking for differentiated products that are going to help them deepen their hooks into their clients and also fight off competitors. And so you don't always need to think just, hey, we're selling directly to employers. You could sell through other platforms and reach employees and employers in the same way. And in some cases, what's wonderful about that is some of these platforms are aggregating small businesses, right? So it doesn't make economic sense for us to go sell to small businesses below 1,000, but we can sell to the platform that has 250,000 of those small businesses, and provide that across the board. So you get that sort of scale, if you will.
Yeah, it works business wise, business model wise for you to
That's
be
right.
able to offer that many. As you realize with consumers, it just didn't work. Now, a marketplace.
Yeah.
And that's what you're based on. That is what you're offering, connections, and you invest a lot into your recommendation algorithm of connecting the two. Building a marketplace. Can you speak to that? Was it easy finding all the doctors and
Yeah.
tabulating that?
Yeah. Well, marketplaces are hard, right? Because you have to manage supply and demand, right? So you kind of have to build supply before you create demand, but then you have to create demand so that the supply stays interested, right? So it's this kind of delicate balance, if you will. And I think in medicine, it's tricky, right? Because it's not like Uber where you have endless drivers, right? And you can just go, you just go get anybody and whatnot and
Much
give them a
smaller
license.
markets.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but in our world, it's what's called a managed marketplace because it's a finite, highly
Mm.
valuable supply side, right? So we focus on specialized care. If you know specialists, they don't waste their time. They don't work with anybody. They have a clear view on the value of their time and who they work with, and so you have to create a really interesting value proposition for them. But the cool part of that is, once you do build that at sort of critical mass, you have this incredible ability to just deploy high quality doctors on health questions, and there's a clear line between better outcomes, better cost efficient outcomes, and the quality of the physician, sort of engaging with that patient.
If you had to think of one takeaway for someone else who's trying to build a marketplace, and you're building the supply first, what would be a lesson learned, a tactic that worked well when building up that supply?
Yeah, I mean, you have to build a critical mass of like net promoters, right? So it depends though, right? Because if it's a human driven marketplace, you have to have net promoters, people who like your platform, people who believe in your mission. If it's a hierarchical structure like medicine, people who sit on top of the hierarchy, whereby people look up at them and say, "Oh wow, if that person's doing it, I should do this," right? So it's an understanding the dynamics of what's valuable for the supply you're looking for, and then thinking about how do you build, what is the value proposition for them, first of all, because if you don't have a sustainable value proposition for them, then you might as well just not build the marketplace, right? So
If you have nothing to actually sell them on that actually sounds great, then don't bother.
yeah, and,
But
and is it sustainable and defensible, right?
mm,
That's the other
mm,
one. So
mm.
yeah.
So building this recommendation algorithm, recommendation algorithms are the key to the success of a lot of SaaS companies these days.
Yep.
Netflix is like the consumer model everyone thinks of. But
Yep.
was that simple, easy? What do you just find the right tech person, the CTO?
Yeah, no, I think, look, I think algorithms are very good. But we've chosen also to inject a level of human sort of clinical interpretation on top of the algorithms too, right? Because, you know, sometimes you go on Netflix and you're like, well, why the heck are they recommending that movie for me, right? You can't afford to make those mistakes in specialty care, right? So it's not you can, the algorithm is really supporting our ability to, take a network, a curated network, and very quickly tie it to a particular case. But there is a clinical layer because there's so much judgment around it. Where is this person in their care journey? What is their history of present illness? All those different types of things. And so there's a couple clinical check boxes that we want to do. um, and you continue to optimize your recommendation engine over time. And look, I think, look, in technology and healthcare is vitally important, everything from AI, machine learning, all this kind of stuff. But healthcare is also very human. You have to keep the human in healthcare, otherwise you're not going to succeed. Yeah.
It's a good soundbite right there. Keep the human in the healthcare, because
Yeah.
otherwise you don't succeed. Where do you see healthcare going? If you were to imagine with me and predict with technology innovations in the next 5 years, what do you think we're going to see?
Well, I mean, look, there's been a huge push on the consumerization of healthcare, right? And I wod say, my company, we're in virtual care, so I deeply understand the world of virtual care. I sort of understand the concept, the data and whatnot. But there are so many solutions out there that are improving the world of healthcare. Um, I think ultimately, you're going to see a vastly improved consumer experience. You're going to see an EHR, hopefully, which is, just sitting on your phone, where you can access all your medical records and that kind of stuff, and then you can tie into different platforms. You'll see a lot of interoperability. So whereas right now you have a bunch of different systems trying to talk to it or not talking to each other, that'll change over time. You'll see the cleaning, and I would say the data is hugely important today, but it'll become much cleaner over the next 3 to 5 years and really inform decision making and whatnot. And then I could just speak to virtual care. It's just going to be a huge piece to the care continuum, everything from diagnostics to outpatient care to monitoring, all that kind of thing. You can take a lot of costs out of healthcare. You can drive a ton of improvements in how patients are engaged. You can meet the patient where they are. You can design whole person care, which is a combination of in person and virtual. Um, so I think you'll see a lot of that. The hospital of the future is not just the bricks and mortar hospital in the middle of Manhattan or wherever city you live. They have to build digital front doors into the world.
Mm.
And so I think it's interesting. So,
There's a lot that you just kind of put in there that I'm sure we could
yeah.
spend a long time unpacking. One being, I agree, getting more access as individuals, as consumers, to our health data. For those that remember, we do have a past interview we did with a company called Human API, Andre,
Cool.
and there's just a lot being innovated that's on that. Okay, how do we get that information and data transferring nicely between all these different healthcare providers
Yeah.
and new apps and solutions and individuals? But I appreciate your last piece there of the digital front door. Is that the phrase you gave? Pops in my head is like you go to the local store and you go by, then you're gonna see a little booth to get your
Yeah.
doctor, or are we gonna all have tricorders that when we have our virtual care we can scan ourselves?
Yeah.
What's possible here?
This is what's exciting for us is that
Yeah.
we're focusing in specialty care, which is a little bit more complicated in terms of the platform and how people engage versus a Zoom call or an urgent care call where you just kind of dial up some doctor and you're talking to them about something, right? It's a little more robust and specialized care because you have imaging, you have more complex issues, you have medical history,
Mhm.
you have all those different types of things.
In specialty care, is it just a lot more conversation, and then when you need certain things done, you just go to go get an X-ray or go, and they'll just send you somewhere. Is that, I mean, how does specialty care usually looked at? If, because I imagine like you said the more normal primary care, there's a few things they can talk to you about, but sometimes they just need I feel like a doctor just needs to look at you and like do to tests. And so I feel like there's a limit to what virtual care can do right now. But is that different in specialty care?
No, it's not. I think there's limits in every, like, in-person care doesn't go away. You sometimes you have to go get an X-ray or an MRI. Like, you just have to do that, or you have to get blood work taken. You can't. I mean, you could do that remotely. Somebody can show up at your door and do it. But you'd be amazed what you can accomplish with virtual care. Everything from the beginning of the journey, what do I do? Who do I go see? Talking to somebody, a navigator or one of our doctors who's helping them understand what their options are. To right now, if you're looking at a telemedicine appointment, which is really the practice of medicine via virtual medium, that's happening today at a pretty high volume. People are getting diagnosed and getting prescribed drugs virtually. And then in specialized care, you have to be careful, right? Because in a virtual environment, there's licensing issues. So I wouldn't be able to diagnose you on what's happening with you. I mean, I would need to see you in person. But if you do have a diagnosis, or you do have you're struggling with something that's been diagnosed, or you're trying to explore treatment paths, the virtual medium allows you to really, like, geography goes away. You can engage with with doctors really anywhere via platforms like ours to help you understand what the best path of care or treatment that's optimized for your diagnosis. So,
what do you see as the biggest barriers for continued growth in virtual care, whether it's specialty care or other?
I think we'll see what happens in the post-COVID era. I think you've seen virtual volumes come down a little bit, but that's okay, because COVID, it was artificial, right? Because nobody was going in person, and doctors weren't, other than COVID patients, they weren't seeing them. So I would say, look, I mean, there's a ton of competition, but I think in terms of the future of virtual care is very bright. I mean, you look at the Mercer data. I think I put it on LinkedIn the other day. 72% of employers believe that digital health will be a huge piece of their benefit offering over the next few years. So employers are thinking about it differently. They see the cost efficiencies. They see the benefits of doing so. So the future is bright in virtual care.
I love it. Thank you so much, Julian, for sharing the journey that you have been on, and the many learnings through that, as well as a little bit on the technology and the future of virtual care, specialty care, and where it's going. For those that want to learn more, go to summusglobal.com. That's SUMMUS global.com. And thanks again, Julian. Good to have you on.
I appreciate it. All right, Alexander. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
We'll see you all on the next episode of UpTech Report. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.